for coming back again. So you give me a vote of confidence that I didn't bore you the last session. So thank you for that, for giving me the courage to continue this session. So this session, I'm going to look at the convergence of blockchain in technology, and as well as slowly you can see that regulation is coming into the picture, because a few years back there was literally no regulation, and then a lot of regulation was just riding on the old Security Act that we have, but now it's changing very quickly. So, okay, so what we're going to do here is that in the next 1 hour or so will be the following the earlier session. Now we have a deeper discussion of Libra coin and Chinese DSAP. So now you have you know what DSAP is from the last session. So now we really go deep into it. I spent last night translating some of the Chinese literature to hopefully can share with you. With reference to technology risk management, that is very important because as regulator and as well as agency, that has become a very important set of regulation that we need to look at. And as a board of directors, you have huge responsibility in terms of technology risk management. And you start introducing A, B, C, D, E, AI, blockchain, cloud, data analytics, and environmental friendly technology, or Q, quantum computing into your company or your organization, then you have to have a set of technology risk management on top of your audit committee, on top of your so-called nomination committee, or any other committees that you may have. So it's just not a financial risk committee that you need to have. You need to have a technology risk management committee, which is now a must under Monetary Authority of Singapore, Chapter 644, that all licensed entity must have a technology risk management. So it becomes a very important topic as we talk about blockchain, okay, and how we can mitigate the risk, especially is the nascent technology. In addition, we will also discuss regulation to promote blockchain, as well as government as a facilitator in using blockchain as a design tool to alleviate problems that they themselves and the corporates have so far unable to solve those problems. So Singapore will be used as an example because I'm from there. So even though I watch the rest of the world, it's unfolding right in front of my doorstep, so I can share a little bit more with you on that. So first of all, we'll go through the case study, Libra coin, DSAP, governance and the policies. The Chinese government as a facilitator and using blockchain as a social policy tool. And you see what comes with it is that there is going to be even more control. Okay, what are the risks involved in that? Do you want to follow the example of more control, or do you want to think that the virtual world is an open sea, that there are malicious elements that you need to guard against, and to ensure that no single point of attack in your centralized system? So you really got to discern whether you want to have a very centralized setting, or you want to have certain points which are centralized and other points which are decentralized to increase the cost of hacking, so that you do not subject to discontinuity of your operation or the entire nation livelihood. And then Singapore government as a facilitator and using blockchain to grow the economy, that become a very important aspect of the growth of Singapore. And finally, the future with blockchain as a core technology for convergence. Blockchain cannot do everything. Blockchain is a design thinking, it's more than technology, but there are a lot more things that it cannot do. But once it combines with other technology, it can do a lot. Okay, the biggest weakness of blockchain is that the first time you put something on the blockchain, you never know that the first time you put that particular object on the blockchain really exists or not. If I tell you there's a cow token on the blockchain, how do you know that token really represents a cow somewhere in Myanmar? You can never know unless you have IoT, unless you have other technology. So blockchain alone has got a lot of weaknesses, has got a lot of risks that you need to be aware of. So when you use them, you have to bear all those in mind. You have to raise your fintech literacy by really learning what blockchain can and cannot do. So case studies, okay. Right, a lot of people think that the trade war is about trade. But trade is actually fairly old economy, right? We still need logistics to transfer the trade here and there, but a lot of things has changed. Previously, when we were talking about the old economy, the factors of production is land, labor, and capital. But now, these are not the essential factors of production. When you run the company, if you don't have data, you almost have no information and you do not know what to do. You have no AI, it's going to be very, very difficult, right? And you don't have the ability to raise funds, you cannot invest into this technology. So the new essential factors of production is actually data. Data become raw materials. Your computing power, which includes AI, okay, blockchain and so on, becomes another important raw materials, and the ability to have capital to raise funds is also important, because if you can't raise funds, you can't invest in any of these technologies. Now, if you are a merchant, right, you want to sell your product, it used to be the case that, oh, I put my product onto your platform, you help me to sell, and your product moves. Now, it's totally different. The platform owner, like Alibaba, will come around and tell me that you have 10 products on my platform. You should manufacture 100 for the first product, manufacture 500 for the second product, and manufacture 1,000 for the third product. It is not you, as a supplier of the product, that is knowing what to produce and not to produce. It is the platform owner that is telling you what can sell and what sells best, and are telling you your production schedule. Can you imagine how much the world has changed and how much the power of transfer from SMEs to the platform owner? And this is something that you need to think about, okay? And that's why blockchain is very important, because blockchain empowers all the SMEs and return the power to everybody. Because when you have too much of concentration of power and wealth, it's not sustainable. And we are here in this conference to talk about sustainability. So we need to think about sustainability. If too much wealth is concentrated on a few hands, the margin of profit consumed is going to drop. The demand, aggregate demand is going to drop, and we can continue to print as much money as we want. All those money, they are going to go into asset classes that has nothing to do with SMEs. Okay, and you will increase the business of doing cost because the rental is going to go up. And then you end up a situation of complete chaos. So that's the background. That's Libra, that's DSAT. They're totally different in design. What do you see in the US dollar? You see, in G we trust, right? In God we trust. But that in G we trust in China is in government we trust, right? And what are you seeing in terms of Libra? It's from in G we trust to in C we trust. In corporate we trust, right? So now the corporate is issuing coins, and they are the trust point. They are the third-party trust, not the government, right? And would it move to in another C that we trust, in community we trust? Possibly. So the community has its own ability, like Alina was strong to say that the community can do something, right? A lot of international organizations like World Bank, ADB are empowering community to do things. So in community, we trust. And how do you bring the community together? Blockchain, right? Blockchain. Because in corporate we trust, there's still a third-party trust, which is the corporate. In government we trust, there's still a third-party trust, which is the government. So you cannot have full trust. You must always distribute trust as much as possible, so that there is sustainability. We are talking about sustainability here. We are not saying that whether it's good or bad, whether it's centralized government or not. We're just saying that when you want sustainability, when you're dealing with the virtual world, you need to distribute trust. Okay? You need to decentralize in the virtual world. I'm not talking about the physical world where the government is still in control. Okay? So this is the new world we're talking about. So the design is totally different. Okay? The governance is also different, which you can go deeper. And the purpose and mission, again, they are different. Okay? But they're all fighting for the same market, and hopefully they can have a share of that market. So let's look at Libra. From Facebook to Facebook. Right? Facebook is going to become a bank. Okay? And this is what they try to do, right? And this is Libra, and about 180 million out of the 2.7 billion users of Facebook are in the US. Okay? That is a fact. Okay? And the other 2.5 are outside US. So there's a lot of cross-culture penetration that Facebook has done. On the contrary, you look at WeChat and Alipay. Almost all 1 billion users are Chinese. Okay? And every year there are hundreds of millions of Chinese who go around, and you go into a shopping mall like Podium, you will see Alipay and WeChat are being used. Okay? But only for the Chinese national, usually not for the locals. So most of the apps that China has they haven't cross-culture yet. The only one that is cross-culture is TikTok. Okay? TikTok has cross-culture, but last few days it's announced that it's under security investigation. So you can see that where things are happening is very interesting. That China find it very difficult to cross-culture, while the American apps are all cross-culture. So that's the battleground, right? Do you want to be single-cultured, synergized, or do you want to be internationalized and you have an international outlook? That is the key question that we're talking about today. When you talk about digital currency, you talk about central government digital currency, that will be the question that you need to ask yourself. So you can see the issue that the Chinese apps are facing. Okay? So what they do? They actually go out to the rest of the world. In India, they acquire the media, they acquire Paytm, they acquire a lot of other companies in Indonesia, Tokopedia, and so on. So you can see that all the Chinese companies, Tencent, Alibaba, are going into different countries, especially in Southeast Asia, in Asia itself, to set the stage using the local culture to be able to serve those people. So in the case of Libra, Facebook, the motivation, as in the white paper, is for financial inclusion. There are still over 1 billion people who are not connected. In Asia alone, or ASEAN alone, there are 70%, which is about 400 over million, have no formal banking facilities. They are underserved. And it's packed to a basket of fiat assets, which we spoke earlier on, that it could be some government security and so on, liquid assets that they're going to pack to. So it is a stable coin in the terminology in the blockchain world. Okay? Earlier on, when I talked about financial inclusion, nobody wants to lend to the farmers today using a cryptocurrency worth $100, and next year you're supposed to get $103, but the cryptocurrency dropped to $50. It doesn't make sense as a lender. So when you want to have mass adoption, you need to have a stable coin. So stable coin becomes very important for e-inclusion, okay, besides having a global token. So this is where the battleground is, and everybody knows that you need to have a stable coin. And there are many stable coins. There are Ether, the US dollar. So you will want to have a US dollar equivalent and a token. You can buy Ether on any of the cryptocurrency exchange. You can even buy renminbi coin on the exchanges. So it's already in existence. The renminbi is already tokenized, or theoretically it's already tokenized, and they are trading. These stable coins are already issued, okay, by corporate. It's already in existence. It's already trading on exchanges. Okay? But now we are going back to say that what are those coins that everybody are focusing on, which is Libra. Okay? But so far nobody has done a basket of currency. Okay? And in the case of Libra, there's 100 notes, okay, on chain. And I mentioned the last session that if 1/3 of these nodes on chain are malicious, then the network may not have a consensus, and therefore there is no liveness in the network. No liveness in the network, meaning that there will be no another block being formed. Okay, it will just be going round and round. There's no consensus, taking a long time. So the number 1/3, which is more than 1/3, which is 34 members in the association, as well as the nodes on chain, is the key number that regulators can actually use it to manage this company. Okay, this is one fact that we know, and actually in the Libra network, they have so-called zero knowledge pool, okay, which means that the ledger is shielded. ledger is shielded, and therefore it seems that there's privacy protection. Okay, and the nodes are delegated nodes in the sense that 100 nodes on chain will decide whether the ledger is verified or not, and they can append the transaction, onto the distributed ledger. It is not really a blockchain, but it does have memory. So earlier session I talked about memory and blockchain, distributed ledger. This is not a blockchain, but it does have memory, so it allows you to do query. Okay, so this is the kind of structure that they have. They have an association, 10 million members, and $1 billion at the end, and they're trying to increase this 100 to maybe 500 or maybe more to diminish themselves, right? The 6D, the 5D that we talk about, diminishing themselves, okay? And also that it allows the private chain, technically I do not know how they do it, so far nobody has done it before, to be from a private chain to a public chain, okay, after a while. How they do it, I'm not too sure how they can do that. Okay, so it's very interesting. They are doing real decentralization, meaning they are distributing trust over time. Okay, the blockchain can become more centralized today than yesterday. If all the nodes drop out and left with 2 people on the network, then it becomes more centralized than yesterday. If more people join, it can be more decentralized. But in the case of blockchain, in the case of Libra, they're making a deliberate effort to distribute trust by diminishing themselves and having more members, and also having more nodes, and also that from a private blockchain to become a public blockchain. And they also shield the ledger so that nobody can see any of the transaction using zero knowledge proof. Okay, so on paper everything is perfect. It fits the 6 Ds that we talk about, the 3 Cs that we talk about, taking care of the community, compassion, creative. It fits the LASIK that we talked about earlier on, but people still have doubts because of intention, which we talked about earlier on. So the intention is that, what is the real intention of it? Nobody knows, and the committee is giving them a real hard time. My own prediction is that maybe the fiat assets here majority will be US. So it will become a proxy for the US dollar, which may in future face a crisis because more and more countries are forming their own trading currency, especially in trading of oil and gas. So that is a real threat to the US dollar as far as the US dollar is concerned. And Libra could act as a cushion for that. Whether it's true or not, I do not know, but that is the kind of argument that's being put forward. So that's it's a war on the coin. Here you can see those are the members here. Okay, and there are a lot more members who want to join now. There are 21. 7 has dropped out. Okay, and this is I'm going to just stop here. But DSEP is more important. DSEP is more interesting. Okay, this is the China national digital currency. A national digital currency, and it's a token. Central bank digital currency need not necessarily be a token, right? But here, this is a token, okay, built with a digital, possibly unspent transaction output, which is very similar to the Bitcoin unspent output. Okay, why do they do that? Okay, and because of the cryptographic technology that comes with it. Okay, and no consensus is needed. It is just like a one-node blockchain. Okay, a single node blockchain, but it has all the fantastic properties of a blockchain. And what are those? Okay, it packs one-to-one with renminbi. They can do peer-to-peer transaction. Okay, with public key infrastructure, which I talked about earlier on. Everyone has got private key and public key. You can do that. Okay, and it's identity-based cryptography. So they have a national identity. It can be identity-based. And in centralized ledger, even when offline. So they can actually transfer to each other at the very end of the chain of this entire central bank digital currency. They still can do peer-to-peer transaction. Okay, it's catered for them. This is very interesting, right? And also the objective is to increase the circulation of RMB and beyond China to complement the Belt Road Initiative for anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing with managed anonymity. Managed anonymity here is unclear to me what they are, but it means that need-to-know basis, right? Whichever bank or financial institutions, you can only see your own ledger. You can't see the rest of the ledger of other banks or their clients or their customer account. So these are very interesting characteristics. And while centralized retains the characteristics of a single node blockchain without the need for consensus, okay? Prevent double spending, which I talked about earlier on. Yeah. Say again. Is it safe to do an offline transaction? We can, but then you can always, because if I'm, for example, in the case that you still have to go online at some certain stage, and then you have to still register on the blockchain. Here, offline can be two things. One is off-chain. Off-chain transaction, meaning you will be like in the second layer, I'm AliPay, right? In the AliPay wallet, I can transact with you, but there's still a mini center there. Okay, that's off-chain transaction. Okay, and then offline transaction could be that I can transact with you. But you are right that there is possibility of abuse. Okay, yeah, that can happen. Yeah, so you have to be very careful. I'm not too sure whether they are catering for that, but it's possible to do that. Okay, okay. So that's it's a single node. So it prevents double spending, which I mentioned earlier on. It's just a centralized ledger. But I use the word single node is because it has all the characteristics of blockchain, except that it has more than one node, right? So for people to understand that it has all the double spending prevention, which we talked about double spending earlier on, right? It can't be like an email that can send to everybody because every transaction has got an ID, right? And then it's a managed anonymity in the sense that it's still anonymous, but on a need-to-know basis, it's mutable. Okay. Yeah.
So you had this very important question about offline, and I'm not saying this is the exact parallel or this is even how it may happen, but this is just a parallel from the traditional digital world. Offline transactions are actually a reality today, and even when I was a banker, that technology was beginning to come in. So you can actually go to a POS terminal today, and if you have your chip card, you can dip it in. And there are many terminals which are not connected online. As Professor Lee said, they'll probably do an end-of-day connection or settlement, etc. So there are technologies like with the chip card EMB technology, it's been made possible with plastic money today. Similarly, if you look at the context of China, given the kind of ubiquity of facial recognition, etc., and Professor Lee spoke about this national ID, there are many, many more advanced mitigants. They would have more than a EMV technology or a chip card to prevent offline abuse. So offline transactions are actually very possible and doable, and especially in an ecosystem like China. And this is just my 2 cents or my read. It may not happen that way, may not happen that way. But just because it is offline does not necessarily make it non-secure. There are already things which are happening out there which are fairly secure or almost as secure as online transactions. And we may see the next level of it happening in China.
Just to digress a little bit, a lot of people worry that if the handphone has got no battery, how do we do transaction? In China, if your handphone has no battery, your biometric will do. So you just show your face. As long as somebody else has a battery, then you can transact. It's very interesting. The world has really changed because before that you say, I'm going to go out, I have no cash, and what happens when my handphone has no battery? Fine, just use your face. So it's a very different world from what we had before. But it brings with us the security problem that we talked about, and that is something that I think someone in the audience are looking on those technology. So so immutable is secure and is transferable. DCP is not the first stable coin, as I mentioned earlier on, but it is the first sanctioned by PBOC. The core satellite system with PBOC as the core and the commercial institution as the satellite. So they don't really stifle innovation by restraining what they can do at the enterprise level. So allowing for innovative business approaches using stable national coins. So you have a lot of room to move as Alipay and also as Ping An or as WePay. So DSAP will eventually be distributed to all commercial banks, affiliated with Chinese central banks such as ICBC, Agriculture Bank of China, and then second phase DCP will distribute to large fintech companies like Tencent, Alipay, to be used in WeChat Pay and Alipay respectively. So designed as a replacement of the M0 system, the reserve system. Every country has their own definition of M0. To them, it's a reserve money system, cutting back on the cost of printing, cutting back on the friction of the bank transfer, having to settle. But China is already, last year, because they already have previously two systems. Most of the central bank has only one system. The bank will do their real-time settlement among themselves. But China already have another settlement system for payments company. So they have two. They already have that system since last year.